Jordan for a long time and, among other places, also in Petra. I know the grave facilities. Particularly impressive to me, for example, was Eddir, the so-called monastery that dates from the 2nd century AD. Billy says I remember. It exhibits a very peculiar mixture of Roman Hellenistic facade architecture and temple architecture, which are connected with the local grave-building traditions. But what, now, was the reason for the destruction of Petra? Quetzal says the destruction traces back to a massive earthquake. But not only was Petra destroyed by this but also many other places around the current Gulf of Aqaba and around the Red Sea. Also the earth opened up, out of which kilometer-high chunks of sulfur were hurled, which were distributed over the vast country. Billy says aha. And since we're already talking about down the what was up with Sodom and Gomorrah, what actually happened there? How were these two cities destroyed? Quetzal says several factors are to be mentioned. On the one hand, a meteorite fell to the earth and exploded high over the area of the two cities, which would now actually be designated as larger villages. This led to devastating destructions of both cities, triggering a massive earthquake, by which the earth was torn open like in Petra, and by underground volcanic activity, small and larger chunks of sulfur were flung high and across the country, which also naturally caused much disaster, and by this as also by the exploding meteorite many people were killed. The remaining part of the total destruction was caused by the megalomaniac and crazy god of the Hebrews, an extraterrestrial who had his headquarters deep under the Pyramid of Giza. His punishment for the disobedience of the population of Sodom and Gomorrah against his commands was that he let two small atom bombs ignite over the two cities, which finally leveled everything to the ground, killing all humans and animals. Billy says, can you tell me, as a doctor and medical scientist, how the preferences for flavors and, thus, for certain foods and drinks basically develop in humans? Quetzal says the flavor preference of humans for certain foods and drinks develops, in principle, in the womb of the mother during pregnancy, which means that what the mother eats and drinks is decisive, and in particular, sweet and good, spicy food and drinks are of special importance. However, if there is an excess of certain flavors, which are received via the food or the drinks of the mother and passed on to the growing child in her womb, then an aversion to these particular flavors may very well arise, as this can also be the case if the mother does not take in certain flavors of food during pregnancy and the child is first confronted with such substances after birth. Billy says then in some circumstances, growing children can become addicted, for example, to alcohol, medicines, or drugs, already in the womb during pregnancy. Quetzal says that is correct. Billy says aha. Then another question, what actually causes ice ages? Quetzal says ice ages result from climatic variations due to fluctuations in Earth's orbit around the Sun. Billy says you said that along with the fact that humans have contributed to the disappearance of the mammoths from the earth, in the end, also climate changes were responsible for this. Quetzal says that's right. Humans very well eradicated the mammoth as far as possible, but the final extinction was caused by climate changes. Billy says the mammoth disappeared, yes, about 10,000 years ago. Quetzal says that only partially represents the truth because the last of these animals still lived 3,500 years ago, on an island to the far north of today's Soviet Union. However, it is true that about 10,000 years ago, mammoths were very strongly reduced by humans, who hunted them very much for their meat, hides, and bones. The meat was used as tasty food, while the hides and the bones found use for the building of huts. Billy says oh, so that's how it was. But tell me, what do you think of the developmental aid that is operated on the earth for the underdeveloped third world countries? Quetzal says this is a wrong work of the earth people that is incomprehensible to us because it goes against all rules of the self-development of peoples but also of the dignity of all people, from whom all possibilities of self-development, self-initiative, and self-progression are irrevocably taken as a result of such an irrational and irresponsible intervention. The earthly developmental strategy, respectively that of the developmental aid organizations and their supporters and implementers, regarding the developmental aid for the underdeveloped, respectively third world countries, is absolutely wrong, because this irresponsible intervention in their affairs creates tremendous damage. As a result of this wrong aid, intervention is made in every form and in every branch of the developmental structure of the underdeveloped countries, which means that these countries and their people become dependent in every relation on the developmental aid and on the goods given to them by the advanced industrialized nations, as well as on all of their achievements, whereby they completely lose their independence. Thus, they lose their freedom, as well as the will for their own natural development. Therefore, they cannot make any more progress of their own. Against this, directives that are to be strictly followed would have to exist, which prohibit such developmental interventions that are usually carried out by effeminate, overhumanized, and false humane people of wealthy countries, as well as by adventurers. Developmental aid, as it is practiced on the earth by the wealthy countries and people, is not only destructive but also inhumane, for through this, the self-initiative of the people of underdeveloped countries is inhibited and made impossible. This is quite apart from the fact that the wealthy industrialized nations and their development supporters are, as a rule, only out for profit, namely in the form that the developmental aid is merely intended to exploit the resources of the developing countries, etc. Overall, developmental aid, in the form that is operated by the earth people, is destructive, inhumane, as well as progress-hindering for those whom the irrational and irresponsible aid is given. For third world countries and their people, the advanced achievements of the higher cultures aren't understandable, they aren't progressive for them and aren't beneficial, therefore, they also can't learn anything from it because they lack the whole career-related development and the associated insights and necessary understanding. The whole development of learning is stifled by the developmental aid. Hence, no real progress can be made but only a dependence on the goods and products that are made available by the developmental aid workers and their advocates and organizations. Thus, a real development cannot result, but precisely this is necessary if the person wants to make headway and wants to form his progress by his own responsibility and self-initiative. This is prevented, however, by the irresponsible developmental aid, at least for the countries and all their people who become blinded by the incorrect aid. If there are a few clever ones from these countries and people who are exceptions, then this still doesn't justify the fact that entire countries and their people are developmentally intervened and made dependent on the advanced industrialized nations and are restrained in their self-development and self-initiative. These are some reasons why our directives prohibit such direct interventions in any human cultures, if these are lower than our own evolutionary state, in terms of consciousness development as well as with respect to medical, technical, and overall scientific development. And indeed, this refers to the overall development of all areas of sciences and, thus, not just to individual interests. Billy says that is clear and plain. But now, I would like to direct you specifically towards the future. You promised me that you would bring me material from the prophecies of Henoch for the third millennium, or that you would give me various prophecies. Quetzal says, of course, I will keep my promise, but before I give you a clear account of the prophecies of Henoch, I would like to point out that prophecies are always changeable and can be changed for the better if man makes positive changes in his thoughts, feelings and actions, leading to that which is better and positively progressive. Prophecies always rest upon specific causes. These again result in certain effects, whereby these effects can be changed at any time if only the preceding causes are changed in their form. Therefore, it is possible that negative or evil prophecies do not have to be fulfilled if the preceding causes will be purposely changed in a manner that positivity and good develop instead of negativity and evil. However, this does not apply to predictions, as these rest upon events that cannot be changed, are inevitable and surely and definitely will occur in the future. Predictions rest upon a preview and thus on a direct viewing of the future, and have to do with neither prophecy nor with calculation of